Yeah. All right. But less about Nancy and a little bit more about Karen. Seems like the temperatures is starting to come down. Hey, Dylan. Hey, now that's cute. Oh, that's really cute, Anthony. And I love your title, Mitch. I like that. Hey, Savannah. I love the font that you've chosen for your type. I love that. What are you doing? Running through all of them? I am a fish. Oh, buddy. That's cool. Have you got a special app that you're doing that with or something, Anthony? Because that is cute. No, I don't think he's angry. Oh, well, thank you. And welcome. Hey, Julian. Welcome to my channel and to my family. These are great friends of mine. How are you, Claudia? Hope you enjoyed the stream today. Oh, well, that's awesome. Um, Almost anything. Currently, I'm like keeping up with my weight loss, but I also do different subject blogs and I do reviews of products and parks. And I'm supposed to paint every Friday, but Friday comes so fast I don't realize it's Friday until it's too late. And I've started a new series where at night I'll be telling similar to camp stories where you turn out the lights And so, yeah, just kind of do all kinds of things to cover a lot of areas so that everybody is entertained in some way or fashion. Oh, well, that's cute. That's good, Mitch. But you was okay anyway, buddy. Nope. Just stopped eating so much and stopped snacking my life away. Stopped just sitting around. I basically do what's called OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. I tried to stick with that, but on occasion I might eat again. But on the whole part, I'm eating so much less. Well, good. I hope that you like them. At least find one thing. I've got a playlist. I've got on my playlist, there are all kinds of playlists you could choose from and just binge watch if you find something that you enjoy. How are you sick, Mitchell? And as far as it goes for using voice activation for your typing, double make sure that it reads what you want to say before you tell it to send, okay? Because sometimes it doesn't understand what you're wanting. Oh, are you? Yeah, me too. I hope you do. Oh, strep throat. Yeah. You need to make sure to get that cleared up. If you allow it to go too long without medication, it can actually cause you to go blind. Mm. Yeah, it's not good to have high blood pressure and everything. No, no, you'll get feeling better before long, Patty. And I hate that you're feeling bad. Mm-mm. Yeah, yeah. I want you to be sure and rest and make sure that you stick with those antibiotics because, Patty, seriously, you'll get feeling better soon. It's hard to swallow antibiotics. I found that the thing that really helped was to get a shot, and it knocked it out in 2 days. Uh, I'd always wanted to have a flavor for my medicine. Never did get it. Had to stick with that old nasty flavor junk. So, um, since you're new to this, I have I've done a lot of storytelling. Hey, Heather. Yeah, I'm just glad that you're taking something, Mitchell. You'll get feeling better. Just stick to it and rest. I think I write too big. I almost tried to run out of room to write your name down, Heather. Oh, well, that's good. Well, yeah, 100 is low, but we sure don't want it to get any higher. Oh, well, I hate that. Oh, well, bummer. Yeah, we don't want it any higher, though. If it stays 100 and goes on down, that'll be good. 104 and 105 is extremely bad, though. So Mitch is okay. He'll be fine. Our buddy will be fine. So anyway, Claudia, as I was trying to say, it is bad, but people's core temperatures are different. They're not all precisely 98.6. That's true. Anyway, Claudia, I've started this story series. There's this woman called Nosy Neighbor Nancy. Now, she used to have a big problem about just sticking her nose into her neighbor's business, and she was always wrong. Well, there's this new woman that moved in, and she is even a busier body than Nancy. And so I am going to more or less bring the character more to light today so that everybody gets to know her even more. So y'all ready to hear a little bit more? Yeah, soup is about the only thing. Try to make sure that it's not too awful salty though, because it will burn the throat. But you want something that's soothing. Yeah, you might want to just go on ahead and type. No, actually, these are all fictional. I come up with my own stories. I don't read off of a script. I don't base them off of anything that I know. All this is just conjured up. My regular group here has grown to love Nosy Nancy. You know, she's been kind of a regular. Oh, well, then your fever is coming down. That's awesome. It's really awesome. Okay, how many are ready to get into the story? That's true. That is so true. Yeah, yeah, temperature that high, you definitely don't fool with it. Most certainly not. Oh, well, you can at least stay until I get done with it. I'm trying to keep them short because the last one that I had done besides last night, well, everybody got yawning. So I'm going to be running them short. So, anyway, to recap, yesterday, Karen and her husband Frank moved into Nancy's neighborhood. And Karen was already starting to conjure up problems by snooping and seeing who she could gossip about. And Nancy was already finding that she was going to be a problem instead of being a friend. So, where I left off was Karen had just got done knocking on a neighbor's door asking what was going on in the window, and it happened to have been an old lady that has the dancing plants in her window. She collects them. And so Karen was kind of upset that it wasn't something of more interest than just dancing plants. And Nancy had already told her to just mind her own business. And when Nancy saw Karen going back up the street, Nancy asked her if she had gotten her nose bitten off. Karen didn't appreciate that very much at all. So this is where we're going on with. So Karen goes on back to her house and she is extremely upset, even more upset with Nancy than just finding out that all the neighbor had was dancing plants in the window. So she marches on into the house and she says, I don't think I like that Nancy one bit. Frank replies, why? She says, because she is too bothersome. You know what she told me? We're not going to use words like that, Julian. You can say what you want, but we're not going to use language. We're going to keep this. We're going to start really being careful what we say in our chat. We're just going to start being really careful. I've never heard of it. So anyway, Karen said, do you know what she even told me, Frank? And what's that? For me to mind my business. Why would she be telling me to just to mind my business? Why would she be telling me that? Maybe because you should. Well, maybe she should mind hers first. Thank you, Julian. Well, she is right, Karen. She might be right, but she has no right. And Karen stormed off into the bedroom. About an hour later, Karen comes back out and she gets looking over into the empty lot. Now, mind you, she had moved into the house that was beside the house that had blown up from the drug lab. So she walked over to the field and she's studying it. Now, by this time, it was just an empty driveway, but the government had come through, the city had come through and bulldozed it so that it was just level land ready to build on again. And she's looking at it and she noticed that there was some chars of wood on the driveway. And she realized that the house had burnt down. And she yells for Frank. Frank comes over. What is it, Karen? Just look at this. This land had a house on it. So? Well, look here. Apparently it burned. There's some burnt wood on this driveway. Yeah, so? Well, I'm going to tell you this. Those parents shouldn't have let those kids play with those matches. Karen, what makes you think that it was kids playing with matches? Well, what else would burn down a house? Karen, seriously. And if anything happened to that family, it's their own fault. Karen, you're going way too far. Am I? Frank, you know very well that kids are bad for playing with matches and burning things down. That might be, but you have no idea what happened. I'm going back into the house. Frank, don't you walk away from me. I'm walking away, Karen. Frank, I'm walking away, Karen. Well, Karen had pretty well had enough of Frank, and Frank definitely had had enough of Karen. So Karen looked a little bit longer at the land, and then she turned around and walked right back into the. Oh, Mitch, I'm sorry, baby. I don't like cussing in the chat either. You have a good night, buddy. Yeah, Julian. Like I say, when I give the shout outs, I say that it's family friendly, and that's what I mean. We're not to be using any kind of bad words. Even I don't like to hear them. So we all have to be very good about this. Well, especially if you've got a drippy nose, just trying to be good and courteous. So anyway, Karen finally turns around and walks into the house. She looks for Frank and finds him in the bedroom, and he's got a suitcase. What are you doing, Frank? I'm leaving, Karen. Why, Frank? Because of you, Karen. What about me? You are hateful, you're mean, you're busy, and I just can't take it anymore. If you want to be the kind of person to go and snoop into other people's business and put blame on people for nothing, I'm not going to be a part of it. I'm gone. I have been with you all these years, putting up with your attitude and your mouth, and we have moved so many times. I'm tired. I'm gone. And where are you going? Karen. Karen's mean and busy. Where are you going, Frank? I am going back home in Georgia. There's nothing there for you. There's something there for me. There's just nothing there for you. Bye, Karen. Frank? Bye, Karen. And Frank walks out the door. Well, she thinks to herself, he'll be back. Anthony, buddy, all these times I've been telling these stories of Nancy and everything. No, Karen is not in the chat, bud. I am telling of a new character that's in the Nosy Nancy series. Anyway, so Karen thinks about for a minute and she thinks, Frank never saw things my way anyway. Well, that's fine. He can go. So she goes out and she sits on the porch and she realizes that the sun is pretty bright and hot. Man, I should be putting up something around this porch. This sun is just too bright. So she goes back in and she rummages through her sheets and she finds something that's suitable. She goes back out and then she realizes Frank always done things like that. Well, she didn't need him. So she goes back in and finds the old toolbox and some nails and she goes back. Then she realizes she needs some kind of a footstool. So she grabs a chair. And as she steps up onto that chair to nail the sheet up onto the porch, the chair collapses. And she falls down. And she realizes she hurts. Well, Nancy saw the entire thing, so she quickly got up off of the porch and went up to her. Are you okay, Karen? Well, what's it to you, Nancy? Oh, well, I care enough to come up here and see. Are you all right? No, I'm in pain, yo Biddy. Karen, if you're going to live in this neighborhood, you're going to have to be nicer than that. Even when I was nosy, I wasn't hateful. Now, where do you hurt? Oh, my hip. Well, okay, let me get you to the ER and they can see what can be done. I'm not going to no doctor. Fine. Suit yourself. I'm going back to the house, but if you need anything, just yell. I'm sure you can yell loud enough. So Nancy goes back to the house, grumbling underneath her voice. Ungrateful woman. And I'm trying to be a nice neighbor, and she doesn't even care about that. And Karen's laying there with a very bruised hip and not even sure if she broke it or not. So she tries to get up and she couldn't move. Finally, she yells, Nancy! Nancy steps off into the road. Yeah, Karen, take me to the hospital. Fine. So Nancy takes her on to the hospital. Several hours later, happened to be a very extremely slow hospital. Karen comes back out, grumbling away. The slow hospital, you would think that they would take care of somebody that had a broken hip like me. Well, if someone like you would just sit and be patient. Do you always act like this, Karen? Act like what? Hateful. You know, Frank told me I was hateful. Why does people think I'm hateful? Well, just sound how gruff you are. You hear that? You're just gruff. You're gruff, gruff, gruff. So mean. I don't know. I guess I've always had a problem with it. I just think people needs to do better in life. Well, don't you think you better be looking after your own self first? What do you mean by that? Well, straighten up your own life before you're trying to straighten somebody else's. Is there a church? Yeah, down the road a little ways from our neighborhood. Good, I want to go. Well, you're more than welcome to. Do you go? On occasion. Well, you need to go every Sunday. Well, I might go this Sunday just to take you since you're handicapped currently. Don't use that word. Well, it's true, and I will, and you're welcome. So Nancy just drops Karen off, and she doesn't help her into the house. She lets Karen fumble her way in herself. Nancy gets back to her own house, relieved to be getting Karen off. In the meantime, Karen's mumbling underneath her breath because Frank wasn't there to take care of her. Frank wasn't there to nail up that sheet to keep the sun out of her eyes. Frank wasn't there to take her to the hospital, and Frank wasn't there to hear her complain about Nancy again. It was all Frank's fault. So Karen just carefully lays down on the couch and continuing to grumble and complain. And then she thinks, well, actually, it's Nancy's fault. But then she tried to think how it was Nancy's fault, and she couldn't figure out how. So come Sunday, they get to church, and Karen is sitting as close to the edge as possible so that she can easily get up. Well, she's looking around, and she notices that a girl over in the next pew is wearing too short of a dress. She pokes Nancy in the ribs. Nancy, you see that? See what? That girl over there in that pew. Yeah? Who is she? I don't know her name. She's been here a couple times. She probably comes here more than me. You see how short her dress is? I didn't pay no attention. Why? That's too short. The guy will want her. Don't you think that's her mother's business? Some person you are. You don't even pay that much attention. because it's none of mine. The service is ready to start. Hush. So they go into praise and worship, and then eventually the minister starts to teach. And all the while, Karen is just looking around. She's not paying any attention to the minister. She's too busy seeing who else that she can complain about. And then finally, it came time for the altar call. Well, Karen happened to keep gum in her purse, and she had been smacking away on it. And when the altar call came about, the pastor asked for everyone to bow their head and be praying, and started calling out for anybody who needed the Lord. Well, Karen's just sitting there, still looking around, and she's smacking that old gum. Nancy looks over at her sideways and pokes her in the rib. And Karen just kind of rubs her rib and says, "Don't do that." And Nancy says, "And don't you do that." And so by the time the service was over, Nancy knew that she wasn't ever taking Karen to church again. She was more disruptive than a young child. She quickly gets Nancy back home. Now, what in the world do you think Nancy is going to do with Karen? Karen is quite impossible. What needs to be done with Karen? If she gets on anybody else's nerves, they might push her out. Do you think that perhaps we need to get Detective Debbie and Dr. Clovis in on it to snap her out of it like they did Nancy? Or do you think that she could be saved like Nancy was? Do you think Karen is redeemable? I mean, at least Nancy was redeemable. Oh no, I think Karen's got way too much of a chip odor. Maybe not. Karen hasn't apologized for anything yet. At least Nancy would apologize when she was wrong. Oh, okay. Well, Dylan, my man, you ended up missing a little bit more about Karen, but I'll quickly go over it. Frank left Karen because he had had enough of her. Nancy took Karen to church, and Karen was disruptive all the entire time. Plus, has Karen spoken to the manager yet? No. Karen hasn't really spoken to anybody other than Nancy, her husband, and that neighbor down the road. And Karen ended up breaking her hip because she was trying to nail up a sheet. Her husband, Frank, had left, so, and she put the blame on Frank for leaving because normally he would do stuff like that for her, and she had to do it on her own. So we'll continue with this tomorrow. We'll see how much love for Karen everybody gains. Everybody likes Nancy. How does everybody feel about Karen so far? Huh. Yeah, that's not exactly of importance, is it? She does, doesn't she? And maybe for Nancy to break her out of it, they had to trick her. But maybe for Karen, it's a completely different approach. Yeah. Oh, well. I do hope that she'll be okay through the divorce. We can at least do that much. We can care because divorce is not easy. I had to make sure to have her popping that gum though, since that's what Levi said that she does. I tell you what, I think for me personally, she'd probably make me cringe, and um, I'd try to stay as far away from her as possible. I'm having a hard time getting into Karen's character because I'm not that hateful. I can easily conjure up things and be like Nancy, but it is so hard for me to do Karen's character. I'm struggling with her. I know. You know what? I tell you something that would be fun to do, and I have thought about doing this before. You could give this a shot. Has any of you ever heard of Build a Story? He said that he's been awful busy, and that's the reason why he doesn't always make it. So, well, with Build a Story, you're in a group and everybody takes part in adding a part to a story. So, like one person will get a story started and then they'll pass it on to the next person. And the person will add more to it, and then it'll be passed on to the next person, and the next person will add more to that story. So, you're actually building a story. It would be pretty interesting. So, if you want, we can take off with Karen and see what we do with her. We might actually be able to bring her to the point that I can tell her story a lot easier because, like I said, it's hard for me to get into her character. Okay, so Karen is back home. She's recuperating on the couch. Once again, she's upset at Nancy because Nancy corrected her in church. And Nancy had decided she wasn't ever taking Karen to church again. And for that matter, she wasn't going to fool with Karen anymore, period. So Karen is all by herself in the house. Nobody to take care of her. And she doesn't know anyone other than Nancy, and she doesn't even know Nancy for that matter. Okay, who wants to go next? Do a couple good sentences or a couple good paragraphs about Karen or Nancy. Oh, no, just the 200 words that's allowed. Or do two of them, like Julian just done here. Karen starts getting sad because her husband left her and she has no friends, so she loses her will to live. She heads to the bathroom cabinet. Well, somebody better save her. Could look up depending on who goes next. Karen heads to the bathroom and she reaches her hand into the bathroom cabinet and looks for some form of medicine to overdose on. And all of a sudden, her phone rings. Oh, that's a good distraction, Dylan. Savannah, have you got an addition for that one? Of course, the only problem with building a story is we do have to wait for somebody to type in. It was Nancy. She wanted to call and apologize for the way she sounded early, even though what she said was true. She just felt guilty and wanted to mend things. Well, Karen thought for a minute and she replied, I'm sorry too. You want to come over and have some tea with me? Nancy says, sure. So Nancy heads on over and they sit and they have tea. And Karen goes on to tell about her story about how they had moved and stuff because of all the trouble that they'd had. How that she would always gossip about people from church and the neighbors. And it got to the point that people was always pushing them out. And then she broke down crying and told Nancy that Frank left. Well, good, Anthony. Anybody wants to go next? Yeah, this is pretty cool. Just having to wait for everybody to be able to type in, but that's okay. Karen makes up with Nancy, but has to leave to get groceries. While she is walking to her car, she finds a $10 bill. How lucky. She gets in her car to go to the store, and a sale catches her eye. She walks over to the, okay, Dylan, over to the book section and sees a 50% off sale for a Bible that was originally $20, and a bookmark is in the Bible. Ooh, this sounds good. I'm anxious to see what now. The bookmark reads, call 959-445-5090 for Frank for more information. Savannah? Nancy, being her nosy self, buys all her groceries and rushes home to call the number. And she stops by Karen's house on the way back so they could call together and figure out what this could mean. But not only did Karen read what was on the bookmark, but she decided to buy the Bible. And surprisingly, where the bookmark was at in the Bible was for you to love your neighbor as you love yourself in the Old Testament. She had never thought of that before, and she took that in consideration and wondered if possibly her husband had left it there, just thinking perhaps, just maybe, Karen would find it herself, and if not, somebody else. Julian? Karen, before she left the store and went home, bought the Bible with the $10 she found, but she had a Bible already. So she stopped and gave it to a homeless man on the corner, and she heard God's voice. Dylan? No, 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 no. No, they rent together. I know Julian had Karen go by herself, but you got to remember Karen has a bad hip, so Nancy. So we'll just slip that little note in there. But Karen was the one that found the $10. Of course, Nancy was nosy enough to be looking over Karen's shoulder, and she did read that bookmark. So, it's being the nosy person that she is. So you made it good. You made the storyline good. Let's see, Dylan was in line. I don't know. I think I told Savannah, but Dylan was in line. God said, go back to him and ask him to come stay the night at her house. Karen was like, that is crazy, and asked Nancy about that. Nancy said to do it, and they turn around to the man. Oh, no, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that the next person was in line. And I was thinking I told Savannah, but you was after Julian, so I'm not wanting to mess that up. Okay, Savannah. All right, Julian. Bye, buddy. Have a good night. They ran up to the man, and before Nancy could say one thing, Karen turned around to walk away. Nancy ran after her and said, what are you doing? You were prompted to help this man. Karen said, Nancy, Karen said, I just moved to this town and my husband just left me. He can't stay with me. I just hurt my hip too. And Nancy agreed. It did sound a little odd to be allowing a homeless man to come to the home, but they still yet had to call this Frank from the bookmark and see what that was all up. So Nancy decided to stay with Karen the night so that together they could take care of this homeless man. So Karen finally agrees to it, and they take the gentleman home. They give him some food and water and tell him to go on ahead and take a shower or whatnot. And when he comes back out, he was pretty cleaned up. And he sat down on the couch to see what they were up to. And by this time, they was calling the number that had been on the bookmark. Sure enough, it was Karen's husband, Frank. Dylan? They call on Nancy's phone instead of Karen's. Frank answers and asks, "Who am I speaking with and who referred you?" Karen and Nancy both pause and then hang up. Nancy says, "Why in the world did he ask for a referral name?" Savannah? Well, this is actually turning into a mystery. And you know how you'd like it to go, though. That's the one thing about building the story. Everybody's got in their own mind what they want to see happen, but we never know which direction it turns. Okay. Me and Savannah will keep it going. I hope. Well, I don't know, Karen said quietly. He never had more than one phone, and that certainly is not his work phone. I would have known before we even called it if it was. So Karen is pondering on it, and Nancy, once again, that nosiness and curiousness kicking in, decides to call back. Karen looks at her like, "What are you doing?" Nancy puts a finger up to motion, "Just hold on a minute." So once again, Frank answers the phone, asks who is he speaking with and who referred them. She said, "Well, I'll answer who referred me first, and then I'll tell you who I am. I'm going to say that God referred me. Does that mean anything to you?" Well, Frank on the other end said, "That makes a lot of sense. Now, who are you?" Nancy said, "I'm neighbor. I am Nancy, your neighbor." "Oh, Nancy, the one that Karen kept going on about." "Yes, that's right. Now, what is all this about?" Savannah. Hey, Mark. We're building a story, bud. Me and Savannah currently are the only ones working on it. Dylan had to step out to the neighbors, and Julian had to go on a hen leave. Yeah, but we're kind of building on top of the start of Karen yesterday. So scroll up as far as you can, kind of read through, and of course, in between Savannah and Julian, I was speaking for part of this story, but you'll be able to more or less kind of somewhat see what's going on. I'm having a hard time getting into Karen's character, so I said that we would just build a story, and it is turning out pretty good. Before she got the chance to say any more, Frank hung up. Nancy, Karen shouted, did you just call the number back and tell him who you were? Nancy, getting hesitant, says, well, she couldn't get anything else out. I'll wait for Mark to catch up. Let me know when you've read all of it, Mark. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Did you leave, or are you letting me know that you're still here, Anthony? Oh, that's the downside of using a laptop. It does not show. All right. You want to add to the story, Mark, or just listen in and read in? Okay. So finally, Karen said, give me that phone. I'll get through to Frank. So Karen calls the number. Once again, Frank answers and asking, who is this and who referred them? Karen says, who do you think this is? At first, she thought that Frank hung up, but finally he answered. Karen, why are you on the phone? Karen said, I want to know what's going on, Frank. So finally, Frank spills all what is going on. But anyway, Frank decides to go on ahead and share what's going on with the number that's on the bookmark. Mark, you got anything to add to that? Well, that's a decent game, though. It's not bad. Yeah. Okay. Savannah? We're building a story, Anthony. Well, Karen, Frank says, this is a private business started before we got married. What? Karen shouted. What do you mean private business? Is this even legal? Well, yeah, it's legal, he says, but I didn't want you to know about it. Why? Well, because you wouldn't have approved. And why is that, Frank? Because I'm busy ministering to people. You, a minister? Not likely. Yes, Karen, I'm a minister. I've been a minister now for 20 years. I'd gotten my license before we even met. And because I knew how you was about going to church and everything, I had to keep this quiet because you would have put down everything that I was trying to teach. And that's why you stuck the bookmark in the Bible. Did you purposefully leave it on the scripture, love your neighbor as yourself? Yes, I did. And why is that? Because I thought about you. What? That's right. I thought about you. Savannah? Mark, do you have anything to add? Savannah's giving it over to you if you've got anything to add to the story. If not, she can continue. Okay, Mark. Frank asks Karen if she wants to give her heart to God. Karen scoffs and says religion isn't for her. Frank lays hands on her and starts praying. Karen breaks down. Well, that's all good and dandy, but one thing that you lost, Mark, was that Frank left Karen because of her ways. So instead, you can say that he started praying for her over the phone. He decided to leave her because he had had enough of her hatefulness. That's the reason why he had called her on, or she had called him on that phone number, because they found the bookmark that had his business number on it. So we'll just say that he prayed for her over the phone. Still, that's good. Even Savannah had made a small mistake, but we just kind of improvised and made it work. So he prays for her through the phone. Savannah? Karen, sobbing, says, "Why, after all I've done, why would you pray for me? I don't understand. I've been so cruel." Nancy, watching everything, starts to cry herself. "Well, Karen," Frank said, "because I still love you, and I know that God loves you too. And if you are willing, we can still make this marriage work. But you've got to change, and I'm willing to work with you and be a better husband. As a pastor and as a Christian, I'm obligated to show kindness and love. And I love you, Karen." So after all that, Karen agrees for Frank to come back home. When Frank comes home, he sees the homeless man and asks what that's all about. And Karen said that God had said for them to take the homeless man to her house. So Frank shakes the man's hand and finds out that the man's name is Harry. And Harry said that he had been on the streets for a few months. He had lost his job, his wife, and his children, and didn't know what to do. So Frank decided to assist this homeless man and get him back on his feet. Mark, um, Frank gets to come back home. Now there's a homeless man in Karen's house, and the homeless man's name is Harry, and he explained that he had lost his job, his wife, and his kids a few months ago, and he didn't know what to do. And so Frank decided to help Harry to get back onto his feet. What have you got, Dad? Nothing more I can do, Anthony. Harry gets set up and Karen Harry gets set up in Karen and Frank's second bedroom. He notices Nancy peeking through the blinds on her second floor. Savannah, Once Nancy sees that he saw her, she rushes away and acts like she wasn't looking. Harry Harry smirks and gets settled in and takes a shower and after goes down to eat with Karen and Frank. He asked them what was up with that neighbor looking through the window, and they didn't quite know what to say. Awesome, Dylan. Kind of go up and scroll through and read what you can, and you can pick up when you can. And so Karen said that they had just moved there not even a week ago, and she doesn't quite know Nancy herself yet. But so far, according to the stories that Nancy had shared of how she used to do, she thinks that she used to be extremely curious and nosy. So Harry didn't know what to think about it. He didn't know if she was just being a peeping Tom, so to speak, or if she was just curious about him herself. Mark? Yes. Nancy's a loner. She's a widow. She had been a widow for around 13 years. I never did mention that, but it wasn't relative to the story. Nancy is around 62 to 65. Yes, Harry is the homeless man. Harry decides he will introduce himself. He asks Frank if he has any extra razors. Frank allows him one to keep. Harry shaved and walks outside. He finds Nancy easy on the eyes. I have no idea where this is going. That's the one thing about building a story. Nobody knows where it's going unless somebody takes a turn. It can go around a bend at any time. Dylan, do you have anything to add to this? Yes, Frank. He came back home after finding the bookmark. Nancy and Karen got hold of Frank, and Karen actually found out that ever since before they'd met, he had been a minister and he had a secret business. He didn't share it with her because he knew that she would tear it down. So behind her back, he had been ministering to different people, leaving his bookmark with his phone number in different Bibles for people to find. And after they got hold of Frank, Karen said, "Okay, Savannah." Karen agreed that Frank could come back home, and they was going to make it work. Hi, Tyler. How you doing? Harry walks up to Nancy and says, "Are you from Tennessee? Because you are the only 10 I see." Nancy gets flustered and was like, "I am not interested in dating anybody, and since when did you think I was a 10? "Well, I saw you staring at me." "That's because I was wanting to see if you was doing anything to hurt Frank and Karen." "Yeah, that's the kind of person I am. I guess you could say I'm a watchdog. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure that you wasn't touching any of their belongings. You know, you're a homeless man." "Well, excuse me, I'm sorry. I got the wrong message. You peeking through the window like that." "Mark, we're doing pretty good, Tyler." "Oh, well, I hate to hear that you're having it rough right now. Anyway, currently we're building a story, Tyler. You can kind of just read and listen in, and maybe you can pick up and add some to the story after a while. Um, well, it's about this new couple. They had moved into this neighborhood about a week or so prior, and so like if the wife found out that the husband was a secret minister, because she's one of these people that's somewhat hateful and tears everything down and stuff. And he ended up leaving, but they kind of talked it over, and he's back, and you'll kind of catch up to it as you read and listen. Realization hits Harry. He recognizes Nancy. Aren't you that old bat that tried to get the man I landscaped for arrested for murder? Nancy's eyes popped ahead. I didn't know you were homeless. Aren't you that old bat that tried to get the man I landscaped for arrested for murder? Wow, what comes around goes around, right? Well, that's the one good thing about building a story. So just kind of listen in. So I'll go on ahead next. I'll go on ahead next. Well, what happened that you became homeless like that? How did you lose your wife and stuff? Well, it happens that me and my fiance didn't work out all that well. As it happens, well, we did get married, but it only lasted for a month. And, well, I don't know if it's her fault or mine, but we've had kids from previous marriage, and she took mine and hers. Well, how is that possible? Shouldn't you be able to keep your own children since they're not hers? Well, she adopted them right after we got married, and therefore she became their custodian. Well, that isn't right. No, it isn't. But then again, well, I don't want to get hateful about this. I mean, seriously, Frank is being good enough to get me back on the line, and get me a job and everything. Everything's going to be okay. Well, I certainly hope so. But seeing that you just lost your right, you sure shouldn't have marched over here and started winking your eyes at me. No, you're right, Nancy. I'm sorry. Now you go on back over to Frank and Karen and let me go back to what I was doing. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry. You're right. And Harry goes back over to Frank and Karen's with his tail underneath him. Mark? That's what building a story is. You go with the flow. And if you want to change it in another direction, that's the good thing about building a story. You can always change the flow so it goes in a completely different direction. So why did you retract your story, Tyler? Why did you retract your message? You want to kind of change it around, Dylan, or add to this point? I don't have a nose itch. I have a small nervous habit of rubbing my face. I don't have a nose itch. Yeah, it is. Was you attempting to add to the story, or was it something else that you was trying to tell us? Oh, you tried. Well, it's a little hard to kind of add in there when, you really don't know how it began or anything. But, you know, it's kind of like this little game that I had learned a long time ago. Either you can build a story by writing a sentence, Or you can draw a creature by you draw a head and then you pass the paper along and they draw the body and pass it along and then the legs and then the feet. And then when all's said and done, you end up with some hilarious creature. It's funny. And build a story as long as like you keep the main characters in there and just kind of switch it around as you want and head in a different direction or whatever. But yep, fancy text for the fancy boy. I really do like those fonts. Those are really beautiful. It isn't an app, okay. Okay. Well, that's all right. You don't have to. Harry thinks about what has happened and he decides to take what happened against Nancy because the landscaper was like a brother to him. I feel like I'm reading the Constitution. So he decides to ask Frank about it. And Frank says, well, Harry, do you believe in God? And Harry says, oh, it's according to what you mean and believe. Well, the thing is, Frank, if you try to take things out against somebody for what they've done against you, it can actually go against you. It can hurt you worse than what it was. Well, man, does that mean like God doesn't like that? No, God does not like revenge. So what is this that you're upset about? Well, there's this person that's across the street from Nancy. And this man that I had been good friends with for a long time had done landscaping for her. And I had done landscaping for him. And he shared with me his story about how Nancy had almost gotten his fiance arrested. Oh, I see. Well, what you need to do, first off, like I said, do you believe in God? Do I need to? Well, it might be a little relevant for the moment. Are you a Christian? No. Would you like to be? I don't know. Why try to kill somebody, Harry? Because I want to. Why, Harry? Because I like killing people. Why, Harry? Because it's fun. That's not even a story. Huh. Okay. All right, Savannah. And so Frank calms Harry down, and Harry decides just to forget about it. But if Nancy says anything else to him about the incident, Harry was going to do something about it. In the meantime, Frank is silently praying that Harry doesn't turn out to be a bad deal. And there has to be a reason why God had told his wife to take Harry to the house. Savannah, of course, I know you don't know all that much that's going on, but Harry just discovered that Nancy was the one who had his friend almost got in trouble because of Nancy, because she thought that she was killing Harry's buddy. Anyway, it's kind of a tripped up story, but it is kind of late to not have gotten to eat yet. All right, Mark. I'll go on ahead and finish the storyline out since it's kind of gotten all tripped up. So, after much praying and talking to Harry a little longer, Harry ends up accepting Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. And that made it a lot easier for Harry to get right back onto his feet. So the next day, Harry goes back over to Nancy's and apologizes once more and shared with her what he had thought, how angry he was because of what she had done. And in turn, Nancy apologizes for all that. And Harry once again apologizes for his thoughts and then shares with her that he had been saved last night. She was very happy for him and relieved at the same time because she didn't know if he would have ended up hurting her or what. And in the meantime, Frank was so very happy because if Karen hadn't obeyed God and brought Harry to the house, Harry would have ended up staying homeless and wouldn't have accepted Jesus Christ. So it all worked out good in the end. And Harry managed to get a job again. And in time, he also got his wife back and his kids. And Frank and Karen made up. Karen becomes Nancy's good friend, and together they become nosy, but in a much better way than Nancy ever had been, and Karen with a much better attitude. And Frank is a much happier man because Karen is finally starting to be a real wife. And that's it for the story tonight. But I tell you what, we ended up making it pretty good. It just ended up getting so tripped up, I had to finish it out. Well, what was your idea? No, you're okay, Tyler. You stepped in there not knowing the complete story, so you done pretty good. You done pretty good. Yeah, really. What was your ending in mind, Dylan? Well, hello. How you doing, Melanie? Well, I don't know either. Nobody has said anything if it is or not. How you doing, sister? Well, that's a good thing. I don't know the last time I've ever showed up in a recommend. Yeah, that's all right. Grandpa's adventures. Grandpa, you threw me off there, buddy. How's Luna? So let's see. Frank was going to end up having an underground prostitution business. That's why I said who referred you. Nancy was going to end up in the police about it, and Nancy was going to do snooping on the streets. The bad thing about that was, though, why would he leave the bookmark in a Bible? I'm glad we got that turned around. Yep. I have to be hitting the algorithm for me to be on the recommendation. That's pretty good. That's good to know. So I made you change your username, Grandpa. Yeah, that does. Thank you, Melanie. Have a good night. Oh, I see. All right, Tyler. I'm glad that you stayed to make the story, Savannah. Enjoy your walk. Oh, I see. Well, hopefully Grandpa's adventures will work even better for you. Me too, Savannah. Have a great night, honey. So what do you think, Dylan? Do you think that you'll do a build a story for your live stream? Think that'd work out? Yeah, but that's all right. Oh, well, that sounds very interesting, Dylan. That sounds very interesting. I definitely want to be part of that. Most certainly. It seems to be helping you get a little bit more traffic in your live stream by doing these little things. I'm glad I'm helping you out. But seriously, I mean, I'm really glad because people's enjoying these little things that you're doing. It's a little odd, Melanie, coming in sharing that with me. But that's kind of exciting, isn't it? My live streams are getting enough traffic that I'm in the recommendation now, which means there will be more traffic, which means there will be more views, which means that there will possibly be more subscriptions. It's going to be an avalanche because I've hit the algorithm to keep it going. Oh, that's okay though, Dylan. Honestly, I mean, remember trivia was Mitchell's idea to begin with. So anything that works on this channel, you're welcome to use for yours by all means. The last time I knew Terry is doing much better. She's not being aggravated no more, and she's doing much better so far that I know. And she hasn't been in the stream for 2 nights, but she done a video yesterday, and she's doing a lot better, it seems. How have you been today, Grandpa? I don't think I even asked you that. Tomorrow we're supposed to get hooked up on that fiber optic, so hopefully by the time I live stream, it will be active, and that means this are to run even smoother. It's going to take a little bit of me getting used to it. Good. Yeah, it's going to take a little while for me to get used to it, but I do hope that you get more attention with it. Sometimes usernames are changing them works, and sometimes they backfire. Yeah, that's true. And the best way to really be able to tell a story is to seriously get into it. That ended up being a really good story. You all really helped it out a whole lot. Yep. I believe we'll do this again tomorrow night and see how that goes. We'll do a completely brand new story tomorrow. It won't have anything to do with Nancy or Karen. We'll just build a story from scratch tomorrow and see how that goes. That'll be interesting. Oh, have they? Well, we'll not think the worst about your new username. And I've got you written down, so I'll send people your way tomorrow in the shout out. Leave a link for your video. Yeah. Yeah. And this is certainly exciting. I look forward to tomorrow night. I look forward to when you run your next stream and see how it goes. But yeah, I'll get your new name out in a shout out tomorrow, Grandpa, and I'll leave a link for your video, and hopefully that will work a lot better for you. For you, I mean, you've done pretty good with the subscriptions, but we need to boost that view time for you. We need to boost those views. So yeah, I'll get you out there. So anyway, guys, I'm going to go on ahead and close this down. I don't have anything else for the stream tonight, but this has really been fun, and I do look forward to doing that build a story tomorrow. We will start from scratch with a new story, and we'll see how all that goes. And I love you two very much. Anybody else who's on the stream and it doesn't show that you're here, I love yous too. You all have a great night.